My name is Catherine Pfeifer, and I'm the special analyst at ILRI. And as a special analyst, I work a lot with open data, and I always wonder why people don't use it more. And this is why today I want to convince you and to show you how you can use geodata to enhance your surveys, and this in particular to understand and explore the patterns of child nutrition and livestock ownership in East Africa. I just want to set the scene quickly, but we've heard yesterday that small amounts of animal-sourced food can really be a game changer when it comes to malnutrition among the vulnerable groups. And we've heard many times that it can actually improve the physical and the cognitive development of children. At the same time, we see that there is an enhanced demand for livestock products. And this is because Africa has a growing population, more people get wealthier. And the demand for livestock is animal source food and livestock products is increasing. And so this is a tremendous opportunity for the smallholder system to start addressing this demand. And by addressing this demand, they can actually consume themselves some of the animal sourced food or bring it to market and improve their incomes. But so how will policy be able to support this, and what does it mean to be nutrition sensitive? So that's what I wanted to explore. And as I told you, I am very interested in GIS data, so I decided to look at the whole problem in a multiscale approach in which I would like to explore the role of livestock. And it won't come to you as a surprise that child diet outcome, mainly animal source food intake, and the diet diversity will depend on who the mother is and the characteristics of the livestock of the household. You will also see, and we heard it before, that the regional context might play. You might be in different farming systems, or I would say different agroecologies, which bind your options. And so we want to look at this in a spatial temporal way because it's also seasonality that plays and geography. I use the DHS data for East Africa, mainly Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. And so how did we do now this trick with the GIS? DHS data contains the 24-hour diet recall, and we subset it to children between 1 and 5. We have the mother's characteristics, and for example, we know who has the decision-making power in the household. Household characteristics, we know a lot about households, whether they own livestock, but also in which wealth category they belong to. And we have this fantastic thing which is called GPS coordinates, which will allow us to link to a whole series of spatial layers. And so we connect them to 4 layers. And I tried to illustrate that geographical layers are kind of pages where you can pin through and take the value. And so we took the value for each of the households for 4 different maps. First, we produced a dairy production systems map, which we tried to identify locations that specialize into dairy farming. And this is because we believe that these have completely different dynamics than people in the more lowlands where milk is a byproduct. We also looked at agroecology because agroecology defines your production system. And we took a bit different approach than Derek. We decided to not use a variable that is man-made, where somebody took a decision, and to go for a fully driven approach. And to do that, we used what is called a Fourier decomposed NDVI. NDVI is a satellite-based product that measures greenness and temperature. Fourier decomposed is just meaning it's a linear approximation of the temporal dimension of the climate. Then we also discovered that these DHS data, they are taken along the whole year. So it actually matters in which month you have taken the interview. So we decided to also find a way to decide whether the interview was taken in the dry season or in the wet season. So we developed actually maps on what is called the K-mean classification on rainfall. So for every location in Africa, we compared January to the other month, classified it in a relatively dry and an intermediary and a wet season. So basically for every location we know whether January is dry or not. So if you match that with the GPS coordinates to your household, for every household you can say in which season the interview was taken relatively to the rest of the climate in that location. And we also used a market access layer telling you time to the nearest markets. And so we extracted this data and enhanced our DHS database. We fitted actually 4 models and to look at milk intake. So milk intake in the dairy areas and milk intake in the non-dairy areas, and whether it is explained by all these variables. Same with eggs and the diet diversity score. We found interesting results. I think that's the most interesting one. Livestock ownership increases animal source food intake. And this is true across. So if you own chicken, you're going to consume more eggs. If you own goats or cattle, you will drink more milk. Then we also discovered that animal source food tends to be reduced in the wet season. And the explanation we have for that is that probably in the wet season you have sufficient other things and you keep livestock to be something for the more difficult times. Children in richer households get more eggs and have more diverse diets, which is something we expect. However, children in poor households get more milk in the dairy area. So in the dairy area, milk is so present that it's probably easier to access than any other food, and therefore poorer children tend to have more milk. Children with older and better educated mothers have better diets, which probably doesn't come as a surprise either. But however, we did not find any relation to gender empowerment. And that probably talks to the presentation we had before, saying as long as it's too general, we won't be able to capture the gender component. Market access has a positive influence on the eggs and diet diversity, so when you're nearer you are to market, the better access you have, and therefore the influence, you just can have better nutrition. However, we found this really, not strange, but astonishing result that if you are in the non-dairy, so the non-specialized dairy area, your market access will actually, 2 farmers I wanted to introduce to you. One was James, and James had 40 cows, of which 10 were lactating. And he stands for these dairy farmers in Kenya who are getting bigger and bigger, and actually start producing milk efficiently and often with a less environmental impact. But if this is a trend we see across Africa, then we will have less smallholders. And having less smallholders means we have less people with home consumption. So there might be a trade-off between the environmental consequences and nutrition that policymakers need to address. The other thing we found, like developing markets, is brilliant. And it's good for many children. But if you go to the non-dairy area, we've seen that this other lady in pastoral areas, they will probably sell more milk and actually reduce their own consumption. And that was the other image I had prepared for you. And that was Amina, the pastoral woman who she's the leader of the first Maasai cooperative. And she was so happy that she could finally sell her milk and send her children to school, and that finally her life was better. But nobody, and the article never talked about how is the nutrition in her family. So as you see from this result, we see there's 2 major trade-offs that will come when we want to develop nutrition-sensitive livestock policies. One is what is the choice we're going to do between being more efficient, more environmentally friendly, but with less people, and nourish, and there will be tendency more people with less access. The second trade-off is basically how much do we value income of poor people versus